Hello everybody and welcome back to a new style of video. Not really a tutorial as such, but more of a project. So what we're going to be doing in this series is building a house from start to finish. A lot of you guys have posted comments on certain facets of projects that you'd like to do or like to see me do. And so I figured why not do an entire project from start to finish rather than little facets of it like in my previous videos. So we're actually going to build this house. So we're going to go in and take the blueprints. The link is here, and you'll be able to find the link in the description below. And it's a kind of a more simple floor plan. It's a smaller house, and we have the first floor and second floor here. So we're just going to save both of those and then import them into SketchUp. I'm using SketchUp 2015, not 2016 or 2017. Primarily because V-Ray, one of the rendering engines that I use, is not fully available yet for SketchUp 2017, but when it is, I'll likely switch over to 2017. So because we're going to be doing a full project, we will be using V-Ray eventually, so I wanted to be able to use that for this project. So we'll go in and import our blueprints now, and so we'll just import the first floor of the plan right now. So we'll make sure we import that as an image. Now it's obviously going to be a little bit smaller than we want, so we'll have to eyeball it a little bit. So what we're going to do here, because this wall is 28 feet, because this is what it says there, we're going to draw a line. So we'll use the line tool with L, or you can go over here and select that. And apologies if I don't mention all of the things that I'm doing in the video, because sometimes I'll make mistakes or forget, just like I did then. So 28 feet, there we go. So now what we got to do, and I'm sure there are easier ways of doing this, whatever you're really comfortable with. If you know a different method, then that's fine to go ahead and do that. We're just going to go and try and find roughly what is something that matches roughly the line that we drew, and I think that's pretty close, because when you zoom in here you can see how fuzzy the line is, and that's, you know, that's only a few pixels wide, so I think that's pretty close. And again, it doesn't really matter too much. We're just going to focus on the exterior probably in this video, and that's, you know, there's multiple ways of approaching a project like this. You can do just the interior or just the exterior. Or you can, you know, it's up to you how you feel about the project, or what, if you're doing it for a client, what they want. Okay, so now, because this is actually an image and not a texture, we're going to want to lock this. But what we need to do there is we're going to have to explode it to make it into a group. So we'll say first floor. And then now we can lock it. So then you'll get a red outline there. So now this can't be moved or manipulated in any way. So now we'll go in and we'll just do an outline. We're not really going to focus too much on the interior right now. I'll say 28 feet because that's what it is. And with the rest of these, it really doesn't matter. We'll just eyeball it again. So now we're actually going to delete the interior of that shape, because it's kind of making it difficult for us to see. And if you draw it and it doesn't fill in like it did just then that basically means when you draw a shape, if all four lines are on the same plane, then it will automatically fill in. But if you're drawing a line that doesn't match up with the existing line, like it's over here, then it's not going to finish. Or if it's slightly above, but on the same plane this way or slightly below, then it won't complete. So if you're running into issues like that, you just need to make sure that you're snapping to your axis colors. Now let's go in and should we do the interior, or should we just leave that stuff for later to do? Well, actually, probably let's pull this in a little bit. I know it's not super accurate, but let's just do it anyway. Why not? So pull that in like that. Now it depends on And apologies if I know some people have commented on me using feet and inches in videos, but unfortunately, really, it's what most people use where I live as measurements for floor plans. So, you know, it makes the most sense for me to do it that way. But you know, if you prefer using metric, then by all means. This has an 8-inch wall going onto the interior. We'll be a bit more precise with the interior walls. So instead of that being another 1/8 inch, let's pull this line back in a little bit. There you go. And then the same with this one. So that's 8. Pull that in like that. And we'll do 8 inches, I guess, for all the exterior walls. I guess except for this one. What is this one here? It's like almost 1'1". No, well, I don't know what the exact measurement of that is supposed to be. So we'll say 1'.5". And let's go in and pull this here. So now I got this section, and it does that little weird. I don't know, it's kind of spazzing out a little bit, but that's just because it's clipping through the existing blueprint. That's not really anything we need to worry about right now. Let's pull a line through here like this. And you know what? It doesn't really matter. I'm not going to be super precise with this. So we'll erase all of the, pretty much we're just outlining all the black stuff right now. I'm actually going to go ahead and delete the guides. And I have a shortcut set up for that. But if you're not sure what to do, you can go up to edit and delete guides, which I have mapped to Control G. And if you'd like to set up your own shortcuts, I think you can do that in preferences. And then, yeah, you can go down to shortcuts and you can just filter through all the commands and something that you would like to be able to do. And then just put in your shortcut. Now, say this interior wall is showing up as about, we'll say 6 inches. I think that's thick enough for an interior wall, no? Let's pull this out an extra inch or so, because that seems a little too close. Although that needs to line up with that, doesn't it? All right, well, we're not gonna mess around with that. We'll just pull this in about 4 inches, maybe what it looks like. We'll put it in another inch. Invalid length. Press the wrong button. Let's pull this down here like that. Erase that, erase our guides. And we'll draw that. No, make sure it's on the red axis. And then there. And we erase that in between space. And then all these little extra lines. And I think that's everything for the first floor. So we're going to go ahead and we'll say, oh, I can't hide, I guess because it's locked. So we'll go say unlock and then hide. So now you can just see all of the pieces that we have built here. So now this kind of gets into some of the more specific sections of SketchUp that really determine how easy something is to do later on. So again, if turnaround times are something that you need to really look into, then how you construct the house and how you construct all the elements within it can definitely be impacted by the way all of those things are put together. So something that I'm going to do here, so I just put the floor in essentially, so it kind of now looks like the actual blueprint that we had. I'm just going to say first floor. I'll say model because I think I called the blueprint first floor as well. We'll go into this and I'm going to just reverse all the faces. And this is another shortcut I have set up. If you don't have a shortcut, you can just click it, right click, and then say reverse faces. And so now it's all white. And I'm going to go into just kind of a more personal choice is endpoints and extensions. I'm not super big on either of those or profiles because now you can have something that's a bit more clean looking. I will turn endpoints on to build things because it makes it easier to sort of connect lines to things. But for either complete models or even just mock-up shots of a straight out of SketchUp model, I will turn endpoints off. And you can do that in the Styles tab, which is in the window tab up top. You can just click on Styles. So now what's sort of important is how high are the walls. So we're going to just pop back into our tab again, and as you notice, there's really no information on the height of the walls. We do have it says max ridge height is 24 feet, but I'm assuming that means the height of the roof. So it doesn't really give us any indication as to the height of the building. And sometimes, obviously, it's better to work with more dimensions, but in this case, it's kind of just for fun project, so I don't think it really matters too much on the specifics. So I made this a component. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into this, and we're going to say pull the walls up 8 feet, just for now, just to get a look to see what it all looks like at around 8 feet, because most ceiling heights are about 8 feet. So now we're going to just back out of this again, but we will now go into the layers tab, and we'll make a new layer, and we'll say first floor. Then we'll click this, we'll go up to this tab, and we'll say first floor. There's a little bit of work to that. You need to make sure that you have the layers turned on here, and that in the toolbars, layers are also turned on there. Because then you can sort of organize your layers here, but then you can also change which layer certain elements are on. There is by default a layer 0, and we'll not really mess around with that because SketchUp doesn't like when you do that. I don't know why. But when you click on first layer, if we now toggle this, you can see that this entire model is part of that first floor. So once we get into building the second floor and different elements of the exterior and interior, we can then toggle through these to make building them and fleshing them out easier. So if we just pop back into our tab here, you can see different elements that we should be able to sort of eyeball where about the height of different parts of the house should be. So this is 24 feet. So it's not really half, is it? It's a little bit more than half. So let's just go in and take the tape measure tool and put that up to 24 feet. So that is roughly where the roof is. So I think for now, let's just go in and raise everything another foot. Maybe I think that could be close. And there's an easy way of raising everything to a specified height. If you just go into the push-pull tool, then you can just drag it over to another surface or corner that's already the height you want it to be, and it will match that. I think what we should probably focus on is more of the exterior work, and then we might be able to get a better judge of how the house is supposed to look, proportionately speaking. Something to look into if this is something that you enjoy doing or something that you want to get into in the future is a multi-monitor setup. So if you have multiple screens, obviously you can throw references up on the other screen or the other screens, and it saves you from having to go back and forth between your reference, instead of dragging it over and dragging it off, and then, or even just putting a little corner down, a picture down in the corner or something like that. If you have a second screen, then you don't really need to do that as much, and you always have the reference visible. So that's something that you should definitely look into. So we have these corner pieces, and then the garage here. So we'll go into this again. And there's a wall in between these, but it definitely goes in like a couple of inches, I would say. So let's pull this. We'll have to draw another line in, won't we? So we'll say 2 inches. Or is that too far? 1 inch? Try that for now. And even just to get a little extra detail, sometimes even just offsetting certain elements of even a window or something like that help create even just the illusion of detail, because certain things when rendered or when taken photos of in SketchUp, they just look a little too lacking in features. And maybe even a little too perfect, and I think it's in some cases that makes things look more unrealistic. So even just tiny little details offsetting certain things, even if they shouldn't really be offset. When you start turning on shadows and things, you go into this, it starts to create different facets and different characteristics of the model. So I'll offset those a couple of inches, and then this should probably come up, and I'll say a foot for now. It doesn't need to be too high. We can always adjust it after. Like that, reverse the face. So I guess we could probably kind of eyeball where the height of all this is by the height of the door. I don't think they have a door taller than 7 feet. And so what we'll do, because we're going to do a little bit more of the details of this stuff, is I'll actually leave the doorway empty, but I will pull the top of the door over like this, so that we kind of have that archway available. And it is sort of thick, isn't it? And I know that's the way it is on the blueprint, but it looks kind of thick. I guess that's the way it is. So we'll actually we'll press, we'll on the surface, when we go to the push-pull tool, I'll hit Control, and then now that allows me to just pull the surface, and we'll go over to here to inference it. And so now we're just creating this interior line. And if I just press K, it'll show us kind of an X-ray view of things underneath. And let's just go in and, because we have that blueprint, let's turn this off for a second. And we'll say unhide all. Okay, and because on this, just delete the interior floor base there, because the floor does go, or the behind the window there pretty much goes in right to the wall. So we'll leave that like that for now. That's fine. And the when you do the control shortcut on things, we'll reverse the face. And the window kind of goes to the same height as the door, so we'll just drag another line up there, and we'll draw a line across, delete the guides. And this isn't really flush with the outside edge of the house, but now we can draw a line up here, and we can push it in to the same spot that the base is. Alright, and now, so by the looks of this, I don't think this is the height that we're going for, but now we can, and it kind of looks like the garage is a little lower than everything else is. So I'll pull this up again a little bit, and this is 7 feet. The garage does look a little lower though, so let's go like say 4 inches lower, and then we'll grab a guide, pull that up, pull that across, and now push this in like that. Pull that up. Just make sure that that's on the blue axis. And we can push that in an inch, just like the rest of it. It kind of looks like that the door here is about the same height, so let's just say it's 7 feet for now. We can always adjust those types of things later. Say 7 feet. It's kind of a tall door, really, but some of those kind of contemporary doors are weirdly tall. I'll push this in 2 inches. Just make the doors 2 inches rather than the 1 inch. And we'll delete this base floor again, so that when we're outside the component, you can see the floor plan. And so some of these, it's kind of unfortunate that with this plan, we do only have the one view. But sometimes, certain projects will require you to work off very little resources. So in this case, we are just going to eyeball it, because this is a sliding door, I believe. Yeah, we'll say we'll pull that in a couple inches, then assume that it's 7 feet like everything else. And we'll also, I guess, assume, based on that image, that the sort of this side of the house is kind of wood, and then that kind of wraps around the back, and there's no other extra supports. If we just go back to the floor plan, wrong layer, we don't really see any of that stuff again. There's no sort of supports coming off the side of the house. So I guess we'll just assume that the sort of the stone components are just on the front element, and so we'll just concern ourselves with that for now. Draw a line across, and we can pull this up to say 3 feet. Just reverse that face again and erase these lines. And now we can do a top to the window as well, but instead of drawing a bunch more lines, we'll just actually draw a line across here like this, and I'll pull across like this, erase that line, and I guess we should probably kind of figure out the height of these windows. So we'll say 1'6" for now from the top of this. We can adjust these windows later. I don't exactly know what the heights are going to be or anything like that. Actually, let's go in and make the top the same height as the doors. Maybe push this down another 5 inches or so. So what's the grand height here? 4'5". Okay. So we'll look at how the exterior all looks. I think that's kind of just the base exterior. So we're gonna go ahead and hide this again, and I'll turn off hidden geometry so that goes away. And now we kind of need to figure out what the height is above the garage. And from the picture, based on the height of our current garage, it kind of looks like it's almost doubled in height. And so the existing height there is 9 feet. And then so if we look at our 24-foot peak height, and we were to go into this, let's just say, and or to raise that another 9 feet. I think proportionally that just looks wrong based on the image, so let's pull it down a foot. Yeah, that does seem a bit too close, so let's actually pull it down another, let's say 2 feet, almost too tall. I think that looks a bit closer to what we're going for. And it's also worth noting that the height we have here isn't the height present in the wood. It's actually probably closer to here. So we'll have to go and raise up those elements a little bit. Except what we want to do is make sure that the height of this element is the height of the first floor. Because once we don't want to start overlapping these components. Go ahead and erase that. So now is sort of where the tricky part begins, because if you want to be able to edit the first floor later, it's nice to be able to just kind of go with kind of a dollhouse approach and just take the second floor off, and then you can look down like we are now looking at the first floor. Except, where do you sort of draw the line between the second floor and the first floor? Because certain elements might overlap and certain ones might kind of throw it off. So now kind of comes the tricky part, and how do we approach adding the second floor? Because where we are now is about here, and that kind of doesn't carry over to where the height is here, or the height of these stone pieces, or even the roof. So we kind of need to now craft it a little unproportionate to how everything else is constructed. It really just, this sort of section of it really comes down to personal preference, honestly. So I'm actually going to take parts of the first floor and make those the heights they would be on the second floor, and then sort of mold everything in around it after. And it may sound confusing because it's difficult to word, but you'll sort of see where I'm going with this later on. So we'll pull it to there for now. I think that looks pretty close. And I guess it kind of looks almost like in this element here that it's kind of doubled in height a little bit, maybe a little bit less doubled in height than the garage door. So we'll actually go to about here, and that says 6 feet, so this should ultimately be about 12 feet. And I just put in 12 inches, 12 feet, and I think that looks kind of wrong. Actually, so let's add another foot to that. Maybe that's a bit closer to what we're after. And this, these are all sort of rough estimations right now. This can all be changed later. We'll delete these lines. And so now we will pull all of these other corner pieces up, except these corner pieces kind of don't really overlap all that well with the second one, because how can I do this? Because this one is rectangular above, and we can't really pull it into the corner, I'm actually going to complete these additional lines and pull it up to meet this height. And then we can pull this up like that, and then just erase these extra line pieces. So now it's the proper rectangle, but obviously doesn't intrude into the first floor. And then there's, of course, the matter of how these intersect on top here, because they all kind of seem like they're the same rectangular shape, doesn't it? So we're going to have to pull this one to there, and then delete this. I don't know if this doesn't really match properly, does it? So let's actually pull this in, just so that it does. And we'll leave that line there because that sort of denotes that it's part of the first floor rather than the second. And because we already have the other two done, we can kind of just sort of process of elimination now. Draw lines this way, and then delete that, pull this one up to the appropriate height, and then the same with this one. So now that sort of gives us the above sort of columns. And I guess what we should probably do, no, we can't do that, can we? We'll leave the deck floor as part of the second floor because we'll still need to be able to look down into the garage. But we'll leave the beams the way they are because they're kind of, you know, paramount to the structure of the base. So we'll leave it like that. And so then this one also, this one isn't like a full-on beam, but it does blend into the roof of the structure. So I'll pull that up. And so that's looking, I think, roughly pretty good. We will need to pull this up a little bit because this isn't actually where the first floor ends. So we'll say another, I would say about 5 inches. How much higher does this look than, say, this? It's almost double, right? So we'll have to go back in, say, pull it to there, and maybe perhaps this is a little too low. Big apologies if this is hard to follow, but sometimes modeling projects and things like that can be difficult to get right the first time. A lot of it is trial and error, and without very specific guidelines or very mapped out and detailed blueprints, sometimes it can be a lot of that. You know, it might take 10 or 15 tries at sort of really honing in the measurement or size of something before you get it what looks to be right. So I think that pretty much covers off the base of the house. And so we've now reduced the height of this to 8'8". But we can obviously toy around with that as we move along because the roof may not necessarily be there. It might be a bit higher on the interior. And that sort of just covers off where the actual top of these are. But I think that's fine for now. So this gives us 4'4" to play with up top. So if we put, say, maybe an 8-inch deck on top of that, and then say, I think it's about 36 inches is about the height of a handrail or something like that, then that should give us plenty to work with. All right, so there we go. Looks a bit better with the shadows. And so I think this looks pretty good for our first part. Pretty close to what we were going for here with the house. Got the base foundation complete, and next time we'll get to work on the second floor and adding in the roof and making sure that sort of our proportions from everything we've already built match up with the existing blueprint. So thank you for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time.